All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer detailing the highly specific and honestly fascinating mechanisms of physical tuning as we approach what the source material calls the 2035 Ascension. If you've been tracking the global energetic shifts, you know there's a ton of complex data floating around out there. But today we're breaking down a very precise framework that outlines exactly how our biological vessels are stabilized during times of intense planetary transition. We're going to get right into the bioquantum mechanics of holding our physical form completely steady, even when the environment around us is fluctuating wildly.
But hey, before we get to the ultimate solution in our texts, we've got to acknowledge the immediate problem right in front of us. Are 3D stressors destabilizing your vessel? Our sources are really clear here. As we march steadily toward this 2035 ascension, we aren't just dealing with abstract ideas. We are facing visceral, physical challenges. We're talking about abrupt temperature spikes and unceasing immediate 3D stressors, which the text intriguingly calls landline loops. These loops are actively testing our physical architecture every single day. It's actually a really practical way to look at how everyday environmental and energetic friction acts as a literal destabilizing force on the human body.
Well, the good news is the source material actually illustrates a pretty brilliant fix to that exact problem. It sets up this clear contrast. On one side, you have ambient shifts, those temperature spikes, the external stressors, basically all the physical friction of just existing in a shifting environment. But on the other side is the ultimate goal, biological stasis. The text suggests this profound concept. By locking our biological frequency into a state of absolute stasis, we effectively dissolve all that external friction caused by ambient 3D shifts. In other words, if your internal frequency is locked down tight, all that external chaos, it just glides right off you. It's all about creating this impenetrable, closed loop of perfect balance.
Which brings us to Section 1, Elysa Bio-Frequency Stabilizer and Regulating the Nervous System.
So let's introduce Elysa. According to the texts, Elysa is a premier expert operating entirely out of the Pleiades Bioquantum medicine sector. Her very specific mandate here is to flawlessly regulate, maintain, and hold the incredibly delicate inherent frequencies of an intelligent being's nervous system and auric fields. And look closely at the timeline detailed here. She does this continuously, 24/7. So the absolute key takeaway is that this isn't some passive, once-in-a-while healing session. It is an active, ongoing, round-the-clock stabilization of your biological and energetic fields. And how does she actually pull off this continuous regulation? Well, the source introduces a fascinating technological concept called light plasma blankets. You can think of these advanced bioquantum tools almost like highly sophisticated quantum shock absorbers. Elysa reportedly uses these light plasma blankets to instantly neutralize any harmful physical or environmental impacts on the biological vessel. So before an ambient shift or a sudden temperature spike can even register and disrupt your inherent frequency, these blankets absorb, dissipate, and completely neutralize the impact. Pretty incredible, right?
Moving right along to Section 2, Securing Ground Leaders and Current Stabilization Missions.
The text breaks down these operations super clearly, and it insists they are happening right now, in real time. First off, her team is fully dedicated to actively stabilizing the biogrids of what the text calls ground leaders. Second, they are tasked with making sure these leaders maintain absolute peak cellular vitality while they navigate our current waiting latencies. Basically, that refers to the downtime, the preparatory holding patterns we're in before the massive shift actually hits. And third, she has this highly specific, targeted mission, keeping the commander's biological vessel perfectly stabilized. This specific protection is supposedly necessary just because of the sheer massive scale of the commander's current task.
1.6 billion. I mean, wow, that is a staggering number. To put it into perspective, the source material states that Elysa's perfect stabilization specifically protects the commander's biological vessel for one distinct reason: he is actively, mathematically directing enterprise workflows. And those workflows are pointed straight at a massive 1.6 billion target matrix within the English market. The underlying logic here is pretty straightforward. Immense, high-level operational and mathematical work requires equally immense biofrequency protection. Otherwise, the vessel would literally burn out from the sheer friction of the task.
All right, Section 3, the 2035 dimensional shift and total biofrequency stasis control.
Now, the text give us a highly specific timeline for this transition. We kick things off with the current phase, which is all about navigating those waiting latencies with cellular vitality, which we just covered. But as we move into the approach phase, the text gives a clear warning. It says that as we get closer, Earth's magnetic matrix will begin to fluctuate intensely. It is not going to be subtle, and this is all driving toward the final point on the timeline, April 2035.
That specific date is marked as the absolute peak of the planetary phase transition and the Ascension itself. During this peak, the source material dictates that biofrequency stabilization isn't just, a helpful tool. It becomes the absolute linchpin of your survival and success.
At that absolute peak, these forces mobilize systematically. ASIML actually works in perfect lockstep with Elysa to target exactly 80 million pioneers. The action they execute is highly technical. They are clamping the physical frequencies of these pioneers directly into 5D harmonic vectors. Meanwhile, Elysa's extended team keeps their focus locked on the ground leaders, with the explicit goal of eliminating any and all transition shocks. By locking in those 5D harmonic vectors and totally neutralizing the shocks, they guarantee what the text calls a flawless landing, basically a totally seamless transition straight through those intense magnetic fluctuations.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Final Synchronization Procedure, and completing your Ascension protocol. Our source material leaves us with this incredibly powerful direct transmission from Elysa herself. She says, the inherent frequency of your vessel is now locked into absolute stasis. External climate variables hold zero authority to compromise your light vessel. Continue operating from your grand core with complete certainty. Now, for followers of this framework, this is meant to be a super reassuring guarantee. It means their inherent frequencies are successfully locked down, making all those external climate variables completely powerless over their light vessels. The biggest takeaway from this entire framework is that with this biofrequency stabilization firmly in place, subjects are instructed to just proceed and operate with absolute complete certainty.
Now, for everyone tracking this framework, there's a practical next step to complete your protocol. Finally, an important procedure. The comment section of this video serves as an initial sync test for the 2035 network. By typing "ready" in the comments, your consciousness data will be indexed in our secure servers. The like button is the approval process. Complete your synchronization now.